So, guys, let's shuffle on to our next topic. And I think this is interesting. Like, I've done a video on this already, but I think it's important to cover here because this is indicative of the issue with Hollywood as a whole. And Hollywood is on strike, whether it be the writers, the actors. But this is the rot at the core of Hollywood in general. And it's this. So, Marvel's Secret Invasion director admits that he does not care about the series' poor fan reception. And I quote, "Is it our job to fulfill their expectations or to tell the story that we're telling?" I mean, you answer that question as a whole before we move on, guys, into the full quote. What do you think? Just that as a whole. What do you think?
I mean, it's if you listen to his entire quote, which I don't want to jump too far ahead here, but like it's not as controversial as this part of it on its own, but
you say that
in a way and again, I get where you're coming from, and this is what I'm going to say to that is basically yes, it is kind of the job, especially when you're coming from because that's kind of what we do, right? Like a part of our job is, I mean, when you're starting from an IP that already exists, yes, your fans do have some sort of expectations. Yes,
there's already a bar there you need to meet.
Yes. Or at least get close to, right? Like, yeah. And the same thing with a trailer, the same thing with everything. Because I've seen so many people come at us with like, well, how could you judge something on a trailer? It's like, well, it's that trailer that's setting up the expectation, right? Like
the trailer is marketing material. It's literally released for everyone to judge it. I never understand why people are like, why, it's a trailer. Yeah, that's the purpose of a trailer. To be reviewed, to be marketed.
Like, I guess what I'm saying is, as a whole, I get what he's saying, and that part doesn't have as much weight. But on its own, yes, this statement, when you're working from something that's already pre-made, yes, you have a set of expectations on top of the trailer thing and everything else, like I just mentioned too. So yeah.
Oh, well, let me jump in there then and add some further context, I think, from my stance on this as to why I think it's such a ridiculous comment to make. Because this is indicative of Hollywood as a whole. And again, let me just sort of jump in, is that one, Hollywood is in a business of providing entertainment. So they should actually be fulfilling expectations. I think that's actually important. If you just look at it from that perspective there anyway, the customer has to have some of their expectations appeased. Otherwise, what are you doing? You're not providing the service that the customer wants at the end of the day. Now, to get into his points very, very specifically about this, is it our job to fulfill their expectations or tell the story that we're telling? Well, with this one in particular, you raised everyone's expectation by actually calling it Secret Invasion, knowing full well it actually wasn't Secret Invasion. So you're building off the back of a storyline to get clicks. So you've raised people's expectations there. And it's a bait and switch because you're like, well, it's not actually Secret Invasion. We made this, and they're quoted as saying this. We made this simply because we wanted to see Nick Fury and Talos interact again because we liked them in Captain Marvel. That's the entire reason this thing was made. So they just built a story around that. That's what they wanted to do. So you've already raised the expectation by calling it something that it's not. And then you've gone, well, who cares? We're going to make the story we want to tell. That's not a good business model. That's awful. And it's this constant subversion of expectation that we get here, that we hear about all the time. I mean, think about like Halloween films, for instance, right? The first one, that was not a subversion of expectation. I think most people expected that film to be what it was, the most recent Halloween. And then the second one came out, and then the third one came out, and people are like, what the fuck is this? Subversion of expectation. You cannot constantly subvert people's expectation and expect them to stick around because they're going to go, this is not what I want. I'm not getting this. You can call it expectations or you can call it satisfaction, right? They're interchangeable in this context. Is it our job to fulfill their, to satisfy them?
And that's what they're saying. And that's what I've been saying for a while, Nate. In fact, you've heard me describe films as not being satisfying. There's not a satisfying conclusion to this film. You do not leave the theater with a smile on your face or any other in particular emotion. Sometimes if you're leaving a film like Barbie, you feel dejected and a little attacked and all these other things, but you're not feeling a level of satisfaction. You're not better for seeing this piece of art. In fact, oftentimes you're worse off because you went and wasted the time and the money to do it. And so the ultimate answer to this situation, and just to add on to what you've said, and probably less eloquently, your job as a director, a writer, or anybody involved in this kind of production, even actors, if you're a gaffer, if you work on electrics, whatever it is that you're doing, your job at the end of the day is to do everything to the best of your ability so that your audience enjoys what you were showing them to the absolute nth degree. And so when you know a particular story forwards and backwards, you should be able to tell that story in a way that leads the audience to a satisfying feeling at the end of it all. And there's no other way to approach film or any piece of art. You want to pull out, you want to withdraw an emotion that can stay with your audience. You want them to have some sense of what they experienced. And sometimes it's not necessarily satisfying, but it's something that reaches them deeply in a non-confrontational way. You know, if you go into, let's say, Oppenheimer, the audience should completely feel the emotions that he's going through, struggling with the idea that he's created the most destructive force that humanity's ever created, that can be leveled and levied on all citizens around the globe. That weight, that sense of responsibility, your audience should walk away with that. But what they shouldn't walk away with is the idea that they are terrible human beings. They shouldn't walk away with any of those other things. And it doesn't matter if it's TV or film. Anyway, I've gone on long enough. So
No. Nick, you want to jump in on this, bud?
They all suck. I don't really have much to add. I mean, Tom and culture. Tom and culture. I mean, pretty much. I agree with everything that they're saying about it.
Nick, I just want to tell you, I respect you so much for being the master of nuance that you are.
Yeah. I try.
Subtlety. Well, so Tom, just to sort of appease you a little bit there, bud, as you said the full quote, right? So it says, you know, with all due respect, he explained, for me, I view all the storytelling work I do as a dialogue with an audience. When the show's finished and put up on the screen, that's my half of the dialogue, and the audience then starts their half of the response to it. I think that's valuable, but I don't know how to answer the question. This is because he didn't read any of the reviews and doesn't feel bad about it. I don't feel bad about mixed reviews. If you had a unanimously good reviews, every movie would gross $10 billion trillion, right? Projects resonate with people at different times for different reasons. And Marvel has a very devoted, even rabid fan base who have expectations. And when their expectations aren't fulfilled, they move in the other direction. They give it a thumbs down. I don't know. Is it our job to fulfill their expectations or to tell the story that we're telling? So it's a tricky thing. I would love it if everybody loved it, but I also don't have that expectation myself. So I feel great about the response to it.
How could he feel great about that? Got a terrible response. How would anybody feel good about that? You idiot!
Juxtapose that thought process that we were just subjected to there in that paragraph with what Tom Cruise goes out and tries to deliver to his audience every single time. He wants everybody to love his movie. He wants everybody to be satisfied and entertained.
Yeah,
and make it just a fun movie. You know, an enjoyable experience. What in Secret Invasion was enjoyable?
Well, but even to go, so Tom, you know, you said you didn't think it was that bad in full context, right? I would say highlighting the fan base and having their expectations is almost worse in this kind of context because, you know, again, you're acknowledging that you have that you have a built-in fan base that do have expectations, especially if you title something Secret Invasion. Why are you subverting those expectations? I mean, what do you think, bud? Because I don't know where you think it's, you know, where this sounds better, I guess, is my point in full context. Oh, Tom's dead, everyone.
Tom? You're muted.
Tom's dead, everyone.
Tom died.
Tom died.
Sorry, I was talking to Andre. What was the question?
Oh my God.
it was like a 2-minute long question.
I'm so sorry.
In full context, the paragraph we just read that you encourage us to get through the entire
context. What makes this better?
Yeah.
Because when he acknowledges that the Marvel has a rabid fan base, he knows full well if you call something Secret Invasion, they're going to want to see the actual Secret Invasion. So what about this makes it better? Because I don't understand what makes this better.
I didn't say it made it better, but in full context, it makes sense. But it only makes sense if you're talking about something that's not kind of a pre-established IP. So like the part where he says, is it our job to fulfill their expectations or to tell the story we're telling? Well, that's kind of I don't know if I'd use the term straw man argument, but it's kind of like well, yeah, of course. At the end of the day, the story should always come first, no matter what it is. But there's an exception to the expectations when it's coming from, say, Marvel or Star Wars or something like that. That's a pre-established IP, basically. So
the story should reflect expectations that have already been established for it.
Yeah, that's true. That's a fair point, right? The material that you're producing, I mean, it should simply the expectations are established anyway because it's an adaptation, right? Like, oh god,
yeah, because I mean, Secret Invasion's already been told in the comics and all that. I mean, the story's out there already for fans of the comic books, and a lot of people just want a good retelling of that same story, and do it in a fun and entertaining way.
Well, I think, again, like I said, I think that is the crux of the issue at Hollywood in general, is that they're constantly setting around trying to tell their own stories, but not satisfying their audience base. I think that is the actual issue. They're just constantly trying to be like, no, we've got the stories we want to tell, the message primarily. So we're going to tell these stories, and who cares about other people? I don't care what they think. Well, you should, because everyone's checked out now of Hollywood. Ridiculous.